28. Spontaneous prayer. God delights in conversation with you. We spoke already about a time dedicated to prayer each day. The second aspect of our daily conversation with God is the spontaneous turning to Him during moments of the day to thank Him, to ask Him for help, guidance, encouragement, or simply to recognize Him at our side. This second type of conversation tends to spring forth from the first, more focused time set apart for prayer. There are some people who will say, I don't have a time of prayer each day, but I'm constantly speaking with God throughout the day. It has been my experience that these people are deceiving themselves in a number of ways and making little, if any, spiritual progress. The daily casual conversation with God tends to be kept alive by the focused time of prayer each day. When we neglect our daily prayer time, the casual conversation becomes less frequent. If we neglect our daily time of prayer for long enough, the casual conversation throughout the day will die out almost entirely, the exception being those astounding moments in life that force us to our knees. The richness of our spontaneous conversation with God flows from having a time set aside exclusively for prayer each day. This spontaneous prayer can become one of the greatest joys and comforts of the Christian life. The first Christian prayers provide fabulous insight into how to develop a rich spontaneous prayer life. In the opening chapters of the Acts of the Apostles, we read about the first Christians. But I'm not speaking here of the prayers of the first Christians, but rather the first Christian prayers. It would seem to me that the first Christian prayers are the words that the various characters in the Gospels spoke directly to Jesus. They provide a prayer for every occasion in life. And perhaps every prayer that has been uttered ever since is just a variation of one of these first Christian prayers. Let's take a look at some. One of my favorites is the second prayer of the blind man Bartimaeus. Hearing that Jesus was passing by, he began to cry out, Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on me. This cry for mercy was his first prayer. The crowd told him to be quiet, but he cried out all the more and louder, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Here, Bartimaeus is teaching us one of the fundamentals of prayer, persistence. Finally, Jesus summoned the blind man and said to him, What do you want me to do for you? Bartimaeus replied, Lord, open my eyes so that I may see. This was his second prayer. See Mark chapter 10, verse 46-52. I think I've probably prayed this prayer 1,000,000 times in my life. Lord, open my eyes so that I may see. I pray this one all the time, over and over, 100 times a day, when I am trying to make a decision and I need light, guidance, and wisdom. These first Christian prayers are both fascinating and immensely practical. There are two great professions of faith in the Gospels, Peter's and Thomas's. Each is a prayer unto itself. We have already spoken of Peter's profession of faith in the region of Caesarea Philippi, where he declared an answer to the Jesus question. You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Matthew chapter 16, verse 15. Now let's explore it from another angle. When was the last time you seriously acknowledged that Jesus is the Messiah? When was the last time you said it? When was the last time you said it out loud? When was the last time you said it to Jesus? We all need to profess our faith in Jesus regularly to keep things in perspective. The other great profession of faith is that of Thomas. Absent the first time that Jesus appeared to the disciples, Thomas became the great doubter. When Jesus appeared to them the second time, Thomas professed in awe, My Lord and my God. John chapter 20, verse 28. This phrase has also played a rich part in my faith journey. In the church of my childhood, there was a small banner behind the altar with My Lord and my God embroidered on it. I saw it every Sunday. It's a small thing, but those words became engraved first in my mind and then in my heart. There are hundreds of these first Christian prayers as you make your way through the Gospels. The leper said to Jesus, Lord, if you choose, you can make me clean. Matthew chapter 8, verse 8-2. The centurion asked Jesus to cure his servant. Lord, I am not worthy that you enter under my roof, but only say the word, and my servant will be healed. Matthew chapter 8, verse 8. During a storm out on a boat, the disciples turned to Jesus and said, Lord, save us, we are perishing. Matthew chapter 8, verse 25. In the prelude to the feeding of the 5,000, the disciples said to Jesus, We have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fish. How often we come to Jesus in the same way, having so very little to offer to a situation. But just as Jesus said to the disciples, he says to us, Bring me what you have. Matthew chapter 14, verse 17. Jesus can work miracles with the little we have, if we bring it to him. Peter teaches us another great lesson through his humanity in the scene in which Jesus came walking to them on the water. Jesus beckoned Peter to walk out into the water. which he did. But Peter became distracted and took his eyes off Jesus. He became frightened and cried out, "Lord, save me." Matthew chapter 14, verse 30. In the same way, when we take our eyes off Jesus, we begin to sink. And yet often, when we are sinking, we don't have the wisdom to cry out, "Lord, save me." Many of these first prayers directed at Jesus were dripping with humanity. A perfect example is Martha, complaining to Jesus. "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself?" Luke chapter 10, verse 40. Do you complain to God? Even Jesus' mother contributes to the litany of first Christian prayers. These are the only recorded words we have of Mary speaking to Jesus. They have no wine. John chapter 2, verse 3. The way she spoke to Jesus is different from the way everyone else spoke to him. Her words are casual, practical, matter of fact, and they declare familiarity that others did not have with Jesus. There are also prayers in the gospel that I hope I never have to pray. A man came to him, knelt before him, and said, "Lord, have mercy on my son." Matthew chapter 17, verse 14. He knelt. He was begging. I hope to never have to beg to God in this way for my children, but I suspect in different ways for different reasons. Every parent begs God for their children. This father's prayer was physical and verbal. He didn't just speak to Jesus, he knelt before him. When was the last time you knelt down to pray? It may seem old-fashioned, but when was the last time you knelt beside your bed at night and prayed? It's a powerful experience. Try it one night this week. Kneel beside your bed before you go to sleep and pray. Pray aloud, and it will be even more powerful. Throughout the Gospels, we also encounter phenomenal displays of faith. In many cases, from the people we would least expect from them from. Who can forget the Canaanite woman who came to Jesus seeking healing for her daughter and got into a back and forth banter with the Son of God? Finally, she won Jesus over with the line, "Yes, Lord, even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Matthew chapter 15, verse 27. Hers was a bold and beautiful faith. There are also the simple yet profound prayers of gratitude, like Peter's just before the transfiguration. "Lord, it is good for us to be here." Matthew chapter 17, verse 4. Some of these first Christian prayers were prophetic. Take, for example, Peter saying to Jesus, "Even though I must die with you, I will not deny you." Matthew chapter 26, verse 35. It was a holy prayer coming from a good place in Peter's heart. He wasn't able to live up to it at the time, but ultimately he did. He died for his faith when he was crucified under Nero. He requested that he be crucified upside down, as he believed he was unworthy to be crucified in the same way as Jesus. There are the unforgettable moments, such as when the thief turned to Jesus and said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Luke chapter 23, verse 42. Do you think much about Jesus' kingdom? Is it part of your reality, or has your view of reality shrunken to exclude it? Of course, not every word spoken to Christ was respectful and reverent, but we can learn from every single word that we uttered by any person in the gospel. The mother of the sons of Zebedee came to Jesus to ask for a favor. "Declare that these two sons of mine will sit, one at your right hand and one at your left, in your kingdom." This was a selfish prayer. We've all prayed selfish prayers. We have all come to ask God for favors, sometimes for good reasons, and other times for vain or selfish reasons. Every time we bring a petition to Jesus, we should ask ourselves, what is my motive in asking for this? See Matthew chapter 20, verse 20, and John chapter 21, verse 18 to 19. To approach Jesus selfishly is one thing. To approach him disrespectfully is another. There are many who disrespected Jesus, including the Pharisees, who were cynical and skeptical and disrespectful to Jesus. We all know people today who approach Jesus in the same way or refuse to approach him. In preparing to write this book, I tried to take a fresh look at the Gospels, and all the people in them. I was hoping to rediscover Jesus by rediscovering the people he interacted with. The thing that fascinated me about the Pharisees, as I rediscovered them, was that they were always accusing Jesus of blasphemy. This was their big hang-up when it came to Jesus. To blaspheme is to speak of God in an irreverent and pious manner. The paradox is that the Pharisees were in fact the ones blaspheming in the way they spoke to Jesus and about him. There were others who even mocked Jesus. The soldiers mocked him, "Hail, King of the Jews," and spat at him. Matthew chapter 27, verse 29. Can you imagine mocking God? We see it more and more in movies and television shows, just as we increasingly hear people taking the Lord's name in vain. It has become alarmingly common in our culture body, both in entertainment and in everyday life. It seems like four guys cannot play a round of golf without someone taking the Lord's name in vain. Let me ask you this. Which of the 10 commandments is the easiest to live? The second commandment is exclusively dedicated to the name of God. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. The whole commandment is set aside just for God's name. That tells us speech is powerful, obviously much more than we realize. I think this commandment is probably the easiest to keep. And if we so blatantly struggle as a culture to live the easiest of the commandments, what does that tell us about our spiritual state? Throughout the Gospels, people call out to Jesus in a variety of ways, and each is a prayer of one sort or another. There are hundreds of these first Christian prayers. As you read the Gospels, take note of them. Pause to consider each. Ask yourself, have I ever spoken to Jesus like this? Have I ever prayed like this? These first Christian prayers are another wonderful theme to explore as we read the Gospels. Learn to call out to God in the moments of your day, casually, in a very human way, like a small child speaks to her father. Our best days are those when we stay connected with God throughout the day. Point to ponder. God is always at my side to help me make the best decisions. Verse to live. Rejoice. Always pray. Rejoice. Always pray constantly. Give thanks in all circumstances. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 16 to 18. Question to consider. What are you most grateful for today? Prayer. Jesus, thank you for being at my side, even when I forget you are there.